think of like financial independence as your biggest like insurance policy. We are actually our own worst enemies when it comes to money management. A lot of people are really reactive when it comes to financial decisions, right?
Meet Sherry, a former Google and Amazon powerhouse turned fintech entrepreneur. She's now building Peak, an AI-powered personal CFO designed to help anyone take control of your finances. In this interview, Sherry shares why financial independence is crucial for women.
I talked to somebody who's actually a little bit older than me who's divorced, and she says that she's actually like talking to a bunch of women who are now in a similar kind of space where like they're going through a divorce or have been divorced and now suddenly are like, I don't know what to do with my money, and
Reviews one stock that has performed exceptionally well for her,
Palantir, yeah, I talk about that one a lot.
and gives an inside look at her journey as a tech entrepreneur.
It's a little bit of a guesswork game sometimes as an entrepreneur, and people might think you're absolutely crazy, but you just gotta like believe in it and just manifest it and take whatever exists in your head and like turn reality towards it.
She even opens up about her thoughts on egg freezing and why she's seriously considering it.
I think egg freezing is like one of the most empowering things you can do as a female. Like all of a sudden, like we can kind of hack biology in a way.
From big tech to bold moves, Sherry's story is all about impact. Now let's dive in. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Arigato Investor Deep Dive. And today I'm so honored to invite a tech entrepreneur. Time when it come to tech entrepreneur, it's like guys that look like very tall and very smart, but you are a lady, intelligent, super intelligent. But at the same time, I'm always amazed like how a lady is able to venture into the tech world and really make a fantastic business out of it. So without further ado, let's invite Sherry to be here. Thank you so much, Sherry, for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Share with us a little bit more about your background. I understand that actually you used to work in tech companies like Amazon, like Google, and eventually actually quit your job to start your own business, which is Peak right now, right? Later on, we can talk about it. But I think that jump is really huge, especially knowing that all these tech companies are people like dying to get in there, and then you choose to quit. Like, what made you do that?
Yeah, so I did start my career out at Amazon and then worked at Google for actually the majority of my career in corporate. And, I was really lucky that I went to university in the Bay Area, like right by Silicon Valley. So I feel like I was just like constantly surrounded by tech. And I was like, yeah, I feel like this is the future, right? I don't want to go into like a career in like banking consulting. Like I want to go somewhere where like I can get stock options. So if the company grows, like your upside is infinite, actually. Yes. And so I really enjoyed working at Google during my years there. And actually, that's what brought me over to Singapore to work on payments for the region. Again, really enjoy my time there. But I felt like something was missing. And at the time that I was kind of considering this question, I was 28 years old. And I felt like I had enough experience where I felt confident in my abilities to try to do something on my own and take a little bit more risk. But at the same time, I wasn't like, in my, 30s, 40s, I have a family, and like risk is just a little bit harder to consider. Not that it's impossible, but there's just a lot more to consider. Yeah. So I felt like it was just the right time to just go out and do something like more interesting, more like risk taking and, build a company for myself. So I actually left in 2021 and have been on the founder journey for the past couple of years.
You were born and raised in United States?
Yes. Yeah. Born, raised United States, spent a lot of it in California, if you can't tell from my accent. But yeah, I lived there for a while. But I absolutely love living in Singapore, which is why I'm still here.
When you first decided to quit your job in 2021, was it a very scary decision for you? Like, did you contemplate it for like a long time, or you're like, okay, I'm just going to do it, and then you just tender?
I mean, yes and no to that. I did think about it for a while. So just to like timeline things, I really started to like try to consider what my next moves were December of 2020. And I think a lot of people, including myself, had just so much time to like deeply self-reflect because it was COVID and we were just home a lot, right? And so I spent so much time like journaling and thinking about like, okay, what are the things that I value? Like, where do I want to take my life in the next couple of years that align with those values? And I was considering a lot of options, including like joining a startup versus just starting my own company. I spent a lot of time then like hypothesis testing. Like I talked to a lot of like friends who were founders. I actually even moonlighted at startups like as if I was employee number one. So I hypothesis tested, right, to see what I wanted. And I realized like any opportunity where there was like a lot of risk, but I wasn't the founder, I felt like something was missing. So then around June, I decided, you know what? Let me just start off on my own because it feels to me that the conclusion that I've drawn after months of reflection and then later like external hypothesis testing by talking to people and trying things out and then decided to just quit. I do think sometimes like if people didn't know about the full story, you might think, oh, it was so sudden, right? Like, you quit, you didn't have an idea, you didn't have a team, no co-founder, and it feels very sudden. But for me, it was actually, something I had contemplated over a period of time and then decided to take a leap.
Kind of remind me about my journey. I contemplated for close to a year, like I kind of felt like, oh, the career was good, the income was good. As well, I'm pretty sure like you're probably making like 6 figures or more, right? Working in tech firm, right? So for me, it was like, it took me a year to think about, is it truly what I wanted to do? Continue to stay in my previous job, like building other people's business and building other people's dream, to eventually I'm thinking, okay, I think like I'm still young. I have enough backup plan. I think I have enough savings to tide through. I invest. And that's how that gave me the courage to live. And it's been a year. So far, so good. And I really enjoy the creativity and the freedom that I enjoy. So for yourself, is your financial background something similar that you felt like you have enough savings? And because you personally also invest as well, that give you more peace of mind? Is that correct?
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. Now, there's nothing wrong with like trying to start a company earlier on in your career. But for myself, I derived a lot of stability in the fact that I spent, a couple years of my life working in a corporate job and then saving a pretty significant amount. So I felt like anything that I did that was higher risk where I might not have the same consistent income, I wasn't compromising my long-term wealth building plans, right? I mean, again, no one knows the future, but, given where I was at, I'm like, I think I'll be okay, I could actually achieve financial freedom at the timelines I want to with, what I've already kind of built up. So I think there's definitely value in treating your 20s as not just a time for like experimenting and figuring out what job you want, but also building that wealth, because compound interest means that it has much more time to grow. So I did feel like it gave me a lot of stability to go do that, and actually a lot of longevity, right? Because I didn't want something to happen where I wanted to give up my founder journey because 2 years in, I'm like, I cannot make ends meet, or I can't do the things I want to because I'm worried about money. So I removed that. So it gives me like, just basically as long as my emotional runway, right? Not having financial runway be the reason why I can't keep going on something.
Like, what are the money habits that you have developed over the years before you actually have enough stability for you to actually leave your full-time job and start your own tech firm?
So I think my money habits are actually relatively straightforward. Number one is that I invest as much of the dollars that come in as possible. I'm somebody who's, I would say, a little bit more like risk seeking. Like I don't keep a ton of cash around. I keep sometimes like 2-3 months. I know like, financial wisdom is, I should keep 6 months. I'm like, it's fine. Like, it's not a big deal. So I try to invest everything. And then I put into like equities mostly, right? I'm really a big believer of not having too much bonds when you're young, because you don't really need that, like, I guess, passive income or fixed income right away. So yeah, I have a habit of investing everything I get and putting it into growth. The second one is I also try to manage to a certain savings rate as well. And again, I'm not about like being like frugal beyond like what makes you happy, but it's about being smart with your money, right? So I am happy to do things like splurge on a nice dinner or buy gifts for people. Or right now, one of my biggest budget items is I travel internationally for weddings because my friends are in the US. So I prioritize those things. But when it comes to like, like, I guess, material things. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not a big like luxury item person. I think the last purse I got that was more than a few, like maybe more than like $300 was a gift from somebody, because they're like, here's a purse. And I don't always like update the newest gadget, right? I'm like, this is good enough. So again, it's identifying like places where I derive the most pleasure from my spend. So it's the most ROI in terms of happiness. So that's how I, keep to like, certain savings rate. Now, of course, there have been times where I'm an entrepreneur and like I haven't been able to achieve that. But at least while I was building my wealth, working at Google, working at Amazon, I try to stick to a savings rate to like not really live beyond my means.
I know most Americans, they like to spend a lot of money. How do you cultivate that saving rate despite the culture overall, it's more focused on spending?
I think that's a good point. I think number one is I'm really glad I just have like the people around me. I always think like you are like the average of like the 5 or 7 people you're around. And I do feel like a lot of my friends here and also back home are like kind of humble, right? Like, again, like your gauge as a person is not based on like, the brands that you have or like the car you have or whatever, but it's based on like, who you are and your character. So I never ever really felt like in my own social circles a pressure to like spend a lot of money to keep up. Like, at most it's like a brunch here and there, or like if you just want to go hiking, that's fine too. So I think that's one way to like that I've been able to like keep that spend low, is just also cultivate social circles where that's not something that is the main value, right? I think that's one. I think second one is it's also my mentality. Like I'm a very competitive person in a way, and not like necessarily competitive with other people, but competitive with myself. And I'm always like, how do I grow and improve things? And actually, I get made fun of for this. Someone's like, you like to earn money more than you like to spend money. I'm like, I just like to see the number go up. And it's like, it just gives me a sense of satisfaction. So it, I guess, reshaped my own relationship where I see it as something that I get to grow and to build, not necessarily like, oh, I can go and like, I'm just going to go splurge, right? Again, I think it's fine to spend money. Like I still do it and everything, but purpose isn't just like, this is something that I can consume. It's more like, how can I create it? And that kind of game, in a sense, I think is very motivating for me. Sometimes when you peel back and just really question like, what are actually the 2 or 3 things that you really prioritize and want to spend money on, you realize the other 7 don't matter as much. And if you're just spending money on those things, it's actually it can be quite empty, right? But maybe you're spending not for yourself, but for your perception or other people's perception. Yes, exactly, right? And I'll tell you like one of the funniest things that I've heard like people spend a lot of money on that isn't super high value is actually like first dates, like especially like, and this is more so for guys than it is for girls, but like not picking like I would say like quality first dates. You're just going on a lot, right? And again, nothing wrong with going on dates and meeting people, but like, you're just going all the time and the most expensive places, and you don't really know this person yet. Like it will really eat into your budget, right? And I would say like you can meet a lot of girls that like don't need to be treated that way the first date. Like you can go get a coffee or something. I think that's
maybe
okay.
Go for a hike.
Exactly. Something a bit more original. I think that's fine.
I absolutely agree, because I think right now with dating apps getting so common, like we kind of go on a lot of dates with different people, but you also want to make sure you attract the right type of people that you want to attract into your life. It's not just about like impressing the person the first time. It's about longevity that matters as well. I can see that the money habits as well as the investing is pretty much ingrained in you since many, many years ago. Is that why when you left your job, you also want to start something that it's personal finance related?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, again, the motivation is also seeing, so many people in the world that don't have the, like, fortunate chance like I did to have like a mother in her life that, taught her good financial habits. That's really where I draw some of my inspiration. Like not everybody has that, right? And, when you don't create good money habits early on, the negative consequences also compound over time, and it could become intergenerational too, right? And I do see that a lot. So I feel like, again, money is not the root of all happiness or the root of all unhappiness, but it's definitely something that has a huge impact. And again, it buys you freedom to do the things you want. It buys you the ability to do things for the people that you care about. So I wanted to focus on that specific space because I feel like, financial literacy, education, as well as like tooling, right, to kind of execute on that is still like not super, I would say widespread. And one area that I've been really interested in is not so much, more investment platforms or more places you can trade, but like, how do you actually make the good decision? So the few steps before you end up, going on Endowus or going on, Philips, Moomoo, whatever, to buy a stock, like, why did you make that decision? When you bought it, what you bought, how much you bought, like, why did that decision happen? And a lot of people are really reactive when it comes to financial decisions, right? It's based on what people tell them. It's like emotion, all of that. When you don't have framework, that logical step-by-step process to think about like, what are your goals? What do you want? What is your appetite and all that? You become reactive, right? So I really want to focus on a space because I feel like there's so much opportunity in that like educational and almost like behavioral side of, investing and money management.
How does your current company Peak help to solve some of the problems that you just highlighted? Like, what's the inspirations? Like, how this app is able to help people?
My thesis is that, we are actually our own worst enemies when it comes to money management. And often it's not because like you cannot understand a certain concept. I think a lot of people know that like, yes, you should save a certain percentage. Yes, you should invest your money. Yes, you should, go and negotiate for a higher income in a certain job, right? Because it's good for you. Or maybe you shouldn't buy that house because the mortgage is going to be a huge percentage of your income. But we're held back a lot by our own emotions. We are, again, could be very much driven by like procrastination and all these things, right? And so it's a lot of these behavioral things that I think stop people from, the desire to want to do something and then the end action. So what Peak does is actually very similar to what like a fitness tracker would want to do for your health, right? It helps understand your behavior. And that's the first step, right? Your behavior is, okay, like what are you buying? Like how much are you spending? Where are you investing? And then slowly be able to surface those insights to you in a way that helps you make those changes. I would say product side of things, we do use AI in the product. Basically what happens is, we do connect your data to different accounts, your bank account, your brokerage accounts, etc. And then within the app, we have these prompts or questions that people can ask, right? So one of the questions that even I still ask today are like, basically like, where am I spending leaks? Like, where am I spending money that I'm not aware of? And then we can generate those insights. So for me, actually, I realized that there are 3 subscriptions that I don't really use very often that I'm still paying for. I think there's 2 LLMs I pay for, and then also Disney Plus, which is a streaming service I haven't used in like months. And I'm just still paying for it. And that's what actually gets surfaced, right? And then the AI doesn't right away tell you, oh, you should cut all these expenses, because I don't think anyone likes to be told what to do. Instead, it'll ask, hey, here's what your subscriptions are. Your costs are this. Let's highlight this. And which of these have you not used in the last month or two? And then it'll start to kind of understand you. And then afterwards can provide actions or suggestions. Like if you are looking to, optimize your spend, maybe look at these 2, Disney Plus, or these 3, Disney Plus, blah, 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 that you're not really using, and consider canceling them, right? So it didn't right away say like, go cancel it, right? Another one is actually daily habits. So this idea that like things that you do on a daily basis, even though you're thinking, oh, $5, $10 more here and there don't matter. Well, if you spend $27 more a day, that's $10,000 in a year. So then we call attention to those habits, and those tend to be things around transportation and food. I would say those are the 2 biggest habits on a day-to-day basis. So it's like calling attention to things that we already know that I would say a lot of us are not great at. So it's a lot of that pattern recognition, and the way that we're able to actually get those insights is actually me looking internally at myself and like what I have been not great at as well. I evaluate the product with my own kind of behaviors, and don't get me wrong, I'm not always great either. And then we spend a lot of time talking to people. Like I think by now with my startup journey, I probably talked to like hundreds of people about money, right? And then an additional like hundreds more just observing, behavior on social media. Like I spent a lot of time on Reddit, on TikTok, and you just actually get so much rich insight around what some of the people's challenges are. Like, it might sound like there's a whole universe of like all these different things that we have to like figure out, but humans do follow some like pretty predictable patterns, I would say, around quote unquote bad habits. Yeah, that's what we try to do. So something that like really seeks to understand someone's personal context, because it's personal finance, right?
Going back to investing, what is your investing philosophy? You did talk about like growth driven, right? So are you investing in pre-profit company? Are you investing in growth companies that have already consistent track record? How do you invest?
Yeah. So how I invest is also very personal to me. So I think investing philosophy should be an exercise in self-awareness, right? So I'm somebody who I use something called a barbell strategy, and it's basically a fancy term for I have a bunch of safe investments. And then that allows me to go and do like a little bit more risky stuff. And why this works is if I lose everything on my risky stuff, it's still like a small enough percentage where I have money to fall back on and I'm not on the streets and broke. But if the small percentage of higher risk stuff returns like 10x, 20x or more, then that becomes significant, right? And actually figuring out how to size that is important, because if you're risky stuff is only 1% of your overall portfolio, doesn't do anything, right? But like as you start to, again, it gets more impactful when it's like 10%, 15%, whatever, right? So I tend to like to invest in, I would say, publicly traded companies that are high growth. And I focus on industries that I feel like I'm knowledgeable in, or I have people in my network that help me become knowledgeable in it. So by and large, within this, like, I would say, space, I have probably 10 or so individual stocks that I invest in. And they will range from being like, 0.2%, 0.5%, 1%, and up to 5% of my portfolio. Mine is Google stock because I got it from employee stock compensation, so it's really, really high. But yeah, I usually have like little buckets, right? So if I just first start investing in a company and I want to see it play out, I might not put like 1%. I will put like a smaller percentage, right? But I will never invest, I think, less than $5,000 in something, guys. I just don't think it matters if it's less than 5,000, at least for my portfolio size. And then I'll look at I guess trends that I think are really interesting. So I'll talk about one stock that I invested in last year that I think has been doing pretty well. It's Palantir. Yeah, I talk about that one a lot.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So actually, my story with Palantir like dates all the way back to 2013 because so they were a private company at that point, and I remember when I was interviewing for investment banking jobs, because I thought I wanted to do banking, I had to like talk about public and private companies, and I actually studied them because I was just kind of obsessed with what they were doing. So yeah, I actually knew about them for a while, but didn't really like actually put real size into investing in them until last year. And actually it's because I was forming a thesis about the AI space. And again, it's the space that I'm in as a founder. So I felt like I can really put more money in it because I understand like the value chain. I understand it as a end consumer essentially of some of the products that are being created. And in the whole AI space, there's infrastructure and then there's like application. And I felt like there was a lot of attention on the like infrastructure side, which is like NVIDIA, AMD, etc. But in my mind, I'm like, that stage is going to be potentially more and more commoditized and the price will come down. But the real value is actually going to be on how AI is going to be applied to use cases. And I think the money is still in like enterprise and government, basically. And I don't think there's a company better positioned to do that than Palantir. They have this like incredible moat because they've been working with government for like the past 10 years or more, right? So if there's any company that they trust, it's going to be Palantir. So if I believe that AI is going to be big, if I believe people are going to apply AI, and if I believe that big government and enterprise will want to apply AI, and if I believe that Palantir is the best company position to do this, then I should buy. And so I actually wrote this out. I think I wrote an article on my Substack, like I think in June or July, right, about this thesis. And then I'd say like 6 months later, I saw some tweet from like VCs and stuff talking about this. I was like, I wrote about this like, last year. So yeah, that's like, I get really deep into some of my investments and I try to really think, all parts through. Not everybody has to do this, but for me, I'm looking for a 10x in 10 years kind of bet, or like, it can do better than the market. And so I do spend time like researching into it.
I pick up that like you only invest in things you understand, right? Like you are not pick up just because everybody is talking on it on social media. Like I think it's so important when it comes to investing. We cannot just invest based on hearsay, which I think most people tend to fall into, especially beginners. They don't know what to do. They would just ask friends, hey, what should I invest in? Oh, you buying this? Oh, I buy, right? Which end up become very dangerous because when the stock price fall against you, which happens always, right? Then you will feel panic and you end up selling, right? Probably that it's actually a good company, but you sold too early, right? Or could be a lousy company, you just held on to it. So I think what Sherry is saying, that you invest in things that you understand. And importantly, like you can see that her portfolio in terms of that 10 stocks, I think relatively are very stringent, and it's not like, whoa, over 100 companies, right? But because if you don't have time to analyze 100 companies, then you just focus on picking that few companies that you truly can understand. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And I basically call it concentrated bets, right? Because I don't need to diversify across hundreds of companies. That's what investing in the S&P 500 is. It's 500 companies, right? 500 of the, best performing companies, right? So I don't have to worry about that. So instead I'm like, okay, like if I had 10 race horses or whatever I wanted to bet on, sometimes it's not even 10, sometimes it's like 5, right? What would those be? Because I actually have the mental energy to keep up with it. And I do, I stay up to date with it with Twitter or like other social media or friends. And I just don't have the like brain capacity to like do more than 10. Because then I don't really, I don't really understand the dynamics enough. I think you bring up a really good point around like investors having to understand what drives the price as well. Because for example, like I'll just keep using the Palantir example, right? Like the stock actually dropped quite a bit in the last day. And if you're not someone who understands the company or maybe how stocks work, you might like really panic, like, oh my God, it's over. But you really have to understand there's two main things that cost it. One is that the Pentagon announced that there's some budget cuts, which quite honestly should be actually good for Palantir because it means that they're going to utilize more technology to be more efficient. But people just react, right? And the second one is that the CEO sold some of their stocks, his stocks. And again, that can be perceived as like, oh no, but like people don't want everything tied up in their company. Like they sell, right? It happens. So, those things happen and, people sold. Now, if you understood also why these things happen for stocks that you invest in, it gives you more calmness, right? Like I feel more calm when I'm able to explain like, oh, this is what's happened. I'm not freaking out. Like long term, like the stock is still going to be, Palantir stock's still going to be fine. Yeah.
And I also like how you place your bets based on your different confidence level and your research level, and like the maximum that you are committing to certain high growth stocks probably is like about 5%, right? That that even if it goes down to maybe completely wrong, you are only losing that 5%. Like you are not disrupting your entire wealth compounding journey, right? So for yourself, how much do you put inside index?
Yeah. I put 60% in indexes. Yeah. So it's pretty
No-brainer.
Yeah. It's like, SPY, like VOO, it's super boring stuff, but it does grow. Yeah.
Buffett said, right? It's just about never disrupt the compounding, and that's how over time you are going to get very wealthy. Okay. My next question is, for your entrepreneur journey, what are some of the biggest challenge that you faced or probably you are still facing, especially it's relatively new and right now as a tech startup, how do you manage like fundings? How do you actually source for fundings, or like how do you even pay yourself?
Well, so luckily, I've been VC backed in my journey, venture capital. So that means we have like a little bit of funding coming in before we had to be entirely supported just by our revenue. So I have been able to pay myself, obviously not as much as Google, but but it is still something, right? So actually the financial security part is not the biggest challenge, again, because of my situation and the fact that I have a safety net. I think that there's a lot of things that are challenging about the founder journey, but I'd say the biggest one is you are just dealt with so many impossible tensions, meaning like what do? Do you trust your gut or do you trust data? Let's say in our case, like we've been running a beta test, right, for our product. Data will tell you something, but then you're also like, wait, but we haven't really like scaled it to like all like more users, right? What if we're overfitting the insights that we get from our current user base for the product, right? Versus like, okay, maybe if you were to zoom out and look at like, like a larger sample size, like does that change things? And sometimes like decisions are just really intuitively felt. Like there might not necessarily be data to show. And I think that's like kind of the beauty of doing a startup, right? Like I think how do you know people want a telephone before they know what a telephone is, right? How did Steve Jobs know people wanted PCs? And then, one of the scariest things for us is like, how do we know people want an AI assistant to talk to about their finances, right? Now, there's been nothing out there that's been like, I would say, huge scale that has gotten very, very far. But it's also a space that's very new. So in my mind, this is where I take kind of more of a gut bet that like what at its core do people really want when it comes to finances? They want to feel like they are heard. That like whatever they're receiving in advice is like applicable to them and it's not just given completely out of context. Number two is that they want to know what to do, right? Not just give me, there's this article about like interest rates going up and down. Like what does that mean to me, right? Like what can I do? Like what's practical, right? What are the little steps? And so if that's what people want, right, then the solution can be chat, even if people don't ask for it, or like the chat like interface. So there's no data out there where like, some scientist did research about, the best way for people cognitively to make financial decisions. There's none of that data, right? But I have to trust my gut and just like look internally like at how I would do things or how I could imagine other people to do things. And it's a bit of, it's a little bit of a guesswork game sometimes as an entrepreneur, and people might think you're absolutely crazy, but you just gotta like believe in it and just manifest it and take whatever exists in your head and like turn reality towards it.
And I think sometimes investing is the same thing, right? Like you cannot be 100% sure that this company is going to be 10x or 100x. The hypothesis could be wrong, but at the end of the day, it's like you take a calculated bet and you really do your best to do your research. And in this case, she does her best in all the data analytics, like coming up with solutions that can help to address people's concern or fear towards money management, how to invest it and all this. I think that's really brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this solution. And for yourself, what is your vision for your company?
Yeah. I mean, I want it to be a place where people develop the most secure, healthy relationship with their money, right? And I think that's something that I think aligns also with like Arigato money, right? As well. It's like, it's not about just being the richest or having the most money. It's actually about feeling like you are financially well, that the money is working towards the things that you care about in life, right? Like you feel like, if anything were to happen to your kids, like health-wise, you have the money for that, or you have the money to be able to travel to see family, or you have the money to be able to take time off work and travel the world or do hobbies. Like a lot of us do not have secure relationships with money. We have in like a therapy like way. Sometimes we have anxious relationship with money. We like check the stocks too much, or we check our savings too much. We're like, and we have this dysmorphia where we think we have not enough, and like that's a scarcity mindset. And then there's also avoidant, which people do too, which is just like, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to look at it. Like there's like, I would say a lot of people do not have that healthy relationship with money because they like not enough has been out there to empower people to have a deeper understanding of themselves, a deeper understanding of how money works, and like connecting those things two together. So that's really where I see as like the vision for our company, right? And just like companies like Headspace, or I use a Fitbit. Yeah, I think you have an Apple Watch. But just like these companies have like made people feel so much better about their own mental wellness, physical wellness. Like I feel like financial wellness is like the area that we really want to focus on.
Are you always having this healthy relationship with money, or was it developed over time? If it's developed over time, how do you develop that? How do you change from unhealthy, like scarcity, to abundance, to knowing that I can improve and on this?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I'm not perfect, I would say all the time, but I'm somebody who just doesn't, and this is not just with money in general, but like, or this is not just with money, it's in general. If I have a problem, I don't let it sit, right? I'm like, if I want to complain about anything, I have to follow it with like an action. Otherwise, like that's how you stay a negative person. Like I'm a positive person, not because I don't have problems, but because when I have problems, I like, I try to lower the gap between realizing the problem and then having a solution. So I take that with money as well, right? And I've actually had like I do make mistakes, right? Like I've been late on my credit card bills before. I have missed flights and had to rebook. Just a lot of things, right? Subscriptions that I didn't cancel. Instead of like shaming myself, I take this approach of I set up what I call a Sherry is stupid fund. So it's like every year I set aside like $2,000 where I'm like, it's a write-off. I call it a Sherry is stupid fund. So I'm like, you know what? I'm debiting from the Sherry is stupid fund. And as long as it's not past that, it's okay. Like it's not going to affect my long-term financial health. So like, I'm just going to like let it go. But at the same time, I'll sit down and be like, okay, was there anything I can do? Right? Like, do I need to buy travel insurance so that doesn't happen again? Do I need like, I would say like my procrastination is a big issue. So instead of like, waiting until the end of the month to realize I should cancel a subscription, if I see those charges cross in my email, I just go deal with it right away. So yeah, I do have some of these things that I've implemented because again, I don't like to have a huge gap between realizing a problem and like having a solution to fix it. And I do that across like everything in my life, or I try to.
I like how you actually have a very fun spin towards whatever things that you're doing. Like even money, sometimes people are thinking that it's a very taboo or it's a touchy thing they don't want to talk about. But even for your own mistakes, you kind of make fun of it, but actually you are being kind to yourself. Yeah, like you're really being kind to yourself.
Actually, it is. And because the way I like to think about it is your behavior is not you, right? Like behaviors happen because we make mistakes, we're learning, right? And we're always trying to get better. So because I made this mistake doesn't mean that like, I am worthless or whatever, right? And so when I don't take things as personally, then it's easier for me to address it and then, try to get better.
And I think like same lessons to our audience here. Like I think everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes as well. I lost money in the stock market. I think at the end of the day, it's like really be kind to yourself. It's just part and parcel of your money management journey. Learn from it, right? Like we don't have to repeat the mistakes, right? If sometimes we might end up repeating, but most importantly, if it's like it kind of gives you a reminder, like you want to make sure you really learn from it and have fun in this journey, because like regardless what kind of grave mistakes we have, as long as we are alive, we are able to figure out how to solve it and how to improve on it. Talking about, a different aspect of life, about relationship. Are you currently single? Are you dating someone? How do you balance between, being a founder, very busy, growing your career, to balancing with, dating someone and having a relationship?
Yeah. So I am seeing somebody. I would say that before that, I was single for 4 years. A good number of those years were as a founder. So I will be very honest, it is very hard to date as a founder. I'm not saying that's impossible, that like your dating life goes to crap if you're starting your own company. It's not easy though. I think initially what was really hard is I think number one, time, because time and energy, I would say you just like don't have as much to be like, I can go on one a week. Like I'm like, I don't have time for that, right? I think second one is relatability as well. I found that it was just
common topic.
Common topic, right? Like, certain times during my founder journey, I was probably a little over obsessive where I didn't cultivate enough things outside of my startup, which isn't always healthy, right? So you just run out of stuff to talk about with people. And like, I felt that way. Like it was just hard to connect. I think as I became more experienced as a founder, I also developed more balance as well, where I realized like, okay, it's not so much like sprinting, it's a marathon. And if I want to be in the game for a long time, I can't like let everything in my life fall to the wayside just for my company, right? So I started to just be more productive with my time versus just trying to grind every waking hour, right? Like the times where I'm like, I'm working, I'm like, I'm just, locked in, right? So yeah, that does leave more time to do personal stuff. So yeah, I am seeing somebody. I did meet them actually through Startup Circle. So also an entrepreneur, which I didn't necessarily like think I wanted to do, but I was, because I didn't want it to be like the only thing that we talk about. But I think it works out. We understand each other, and I think it's healthy that way. So I feel very lucky about that, and we also make sure that we have at least one date night a week. It's like basically like non-negotiable time, unless like we're traveling or whatever else, right? Not because of work, but because of like other personal reasons. We always have that. So you gotta find ways to like carve out some time. You might not have a lot of free time as an entrepreneur, but just figure out what works for you. So for me, it's like Thursday night is date night. Friday, Saturday, Friday night to Saturday, I generally don't work. I just need time to like, I don't know, if I just want to go out really late on Friday, I have that freedom. Like it's my me time. Yeah. Whatever I want to do with it. Right. And then, yeah, that's how I manage my schedule. Whatever I want to do in those hours, like that's for me.
As a lady, I think societal confirmation like always tell us that, oh, our time clock is ticking. We are turning 35 soon, and then like if you don't have a kids, then eventually maybe you might not even have one. Do you have concern like this? Is having a kid something that you envision for your future?
So I had been going back and forth on this question for the longest time, because I would say like I'm probably in the minority where being a mother was not like that goal I had growing up. I think I wanted to like be president. Like this isn't this kid. I was like, I want to be president. I want to go to the moon. Like I think I've always been like, oh, I want to like do something with my work, right? And like again, nothing wrong with wanting to be a mother as a goal, but like that just wasn't like me for the longest time. I think like as I've gotten older, I've seen the value of starting a family. Like I feel like there's just it's like another vessel to just show how much you love someone in the world, right? And I've generally, I'd say, had pretty good relationship with my family. I love having a brother, so I can see it. Again, not someone who's like had a maternal instinct from day one, but I can definitely see it. Now that some of my friends have kids and everything, I'm like, oh, it's okay. It's another like form of joy that I see. Now, in terms of like the practical side of things, I knew that I didn't want to have kids in my early 30s. And that was probably one of the reasons why I broken up with a previous partner that I had, who I dated in my 20s, because he is more like way more traditional than me. Like he said his greatest joy in life was wanting to have kids. And when I was like still like on the fence and everything, I'm like, that's just not going to work out. It's a bit of a deal breaker, right? So I always knew that like my 30s was going to be a time to accelerate my career, which is like what I'm trying to do right now. And I feel like it's going to be very tough to balance having children and then doing this, at least for myself, right? I'm very like all or nothing kind of person. So I always knew that I wasn't going to have kids in my early 30s. I can see it for my second half of my 30s. Now, how to do that, I will have to actually freeze my eggs soon. I have, they say 2 years, not 2 years. They say like, try to do it before 35. So I'm like, okay, 33, I should probably do it soon. But yeah, I've been like planning for it. I think short of actually identifying like the hospital where I'm going to do it, like I've already committed mentally that I'm going to at least have that option.
This is exactly what I'm planning to do as well. Because I'm turning 35 this year. Yeah. And I do know that eventually I want to have kids, but I might not be in the best state right now in terms of like emotionally like my career focus mind probably still telling me that, oh, I want to wait for like a couple of like 2-3 years, right?
Yeah.
So I felt like egg freezing gave me the option to, hey, eventually if I really cannot conceive naturally, I can always fall back to this healthy egg that I have when I'm like before 25. So wow, I'm surprised that you actually have the same thought as me.
Yeah. I think egg freezing is like one of the most empowering things you can do as a female. Like all of a sudden, like we can kind of hack biology in a way. Yeah. One of the things I really, really, really like didn't want to have to go through like a few years ago was like having to like, give up what I wanted to do for my career or like cap my ambition because I wanted kids. And I think I even saw the stats, something like, during one of the reasons why there's a huge pay gap between men and women is because women are having kids during actually the most important years of career advancement because of the biological clock, right? So I'm like, this is the best hack because actually once you reach a certain inflection point in your career, you actually can take a couple years off and it actually won't affect you as much. And then so I think in my mind, that's actually more of your like late 30s where like you have established yourself, maybe you have a brand or, you have like bodies of work or network or whatever. And you can actually like take the gas pedal off a little bit, right? Yeah. And hopefully by then you also have more money where you can like also get a lot of like support, right? So that was my thinking, right? Is to like hack this timeline that a lot of us worry about as women.
And I think like I saw some celebrities as well. They are in their like 40s, and because they use this hack, they are still able to conceive in their 40s. Even though I mean like physically wise, they probably take slightly longer to recover, but it fulfill their dream of being able to become a mother even at 40 plus, right? I think that's truly amazing.
Yeah, and I think like it's so important, like when you're having kids, to have it when you feel like you are the most ready, right? Because I want to like be so 100% focused, right, as a parent. And if I'm like, if my mind is somewhere else, right, like I'm going to feel like I'm either not a good mother or I'm like not doing a good job in my career. And I just don't want that tension. And I know it's sometimes impossible to avoid, but like as much as I can like mitigate that, like I would want to do that.
We don't want to over compromise what we are capable of achieving, and then don't want to over compromise our own happiness just because our biological clock is ticking. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. And then also like make sure you're not choosing whatever partner you're with at a certain time to have kids at a certain age because of the biological clock, because maybe that is the right alignment of stuff for you to have kids, but maybe it's not, right? And I wanted to make sure that like it was the right alignment for me.
But I have a question, like when would you ever feel that you are ready to have a family?
That's a good question.
A lot of people say that you will never be ready. That's what they say.
I would go by emotion, by gut intuition. Maybe you don't have data.
I get what you mean.
Right? Okay. It's kind of like, when I wanted to quit Google and start a company, right? It's not like I had data that like, oh, Sherry's going to be a fantastic founder. I'm like, who knows, right? But I just wanted to do it. Like I wanted to do it so much. I was like, I went to bed thinking about it. And I think that was the same thing will happen for me. Like when I'm ready, it's like not so much like, oh, like everything is like in place. It's just more like I go to bed thinking at night, like I want to do this. Then it's like, yeah, it's time.
And what would be some of the advice that you want to give to our ladies watching here in front to empower them more, be it, is it financially, is it like emotionally? What would be 3 important advice that you want to leave it to them?
Please be financially independent as much as you can. I still think that even though it is 2025, a lot of people see like the partner that they're going to be with as their ticket to like financial stability, right? And don't get me wrong, it is okay to date somebody because one of the reasons is that they're financially stable. But if you are yourself not as stable yourself and you see that as a ticket, then you expose yourself to some risk, right? Like what if they cheat on you? What if they want to leave you? What if they pass away, right? There's so many different factors that can happen. I talked to somebody who's actually a little bit older than me who's divorced, and she says that she's actually like talking to a bunch of women who are now in a similar kind of space where like they are going through a divorce or have been divorced and now suddenly are like, I don't know what to do with my money. And you've spent, many, many years not thinking about building that for yourself, right? So think of like financial independence as your biggest like insurance policy, right? It's so empowering. I'm not saying you have to go and be rich, but like at least have a safety net and understand how to get there. I think number two is that women can embrace investing a little bit more and start practicing getting used to the risk. I have a lot of female friends who are very, very smart, right? They're like in like, big corporate jobs or like law
firms, accountants.
Yeah, all of it. And they say they don't really invest much or they don't spend any time thinking about money because the same kind of critical thinking that they apply to their job, they do not apply to their money because they just use emotion because they're worried about making a mistake or doing something and losing money. And when we're not like trained on a certain topic, I think as women, we default to like some social training and some emotion. And I notice that a lot. Like we still have a lot more, I would say, men that use our product, and I want more ladies to use it. But I think that part of it is that there's something that holds people back emotionally, that fear, right? Yeah. And the best way to get past that fear I've seen is a few things. I think number one is find community because I think women are very social. So if they feel like they're supported with somebody else who doesn't judge them, that will help them, and they're in a group, like it will like that will help speed things up and also have support and accountability for that person. And the second one is just practice. Like just get used to like putting a little bit of money in, seeing how it goes, putting more, seeing how it goes, and just like build over time. Like just do a little bit often, right? Don't do big very infrequently because that's scary to you. But like do a little bit very often and eventually you'll train yourself, right?
Yeah. When you said that we can actually just, especially if you're very new to investing, you don't know what to do. Like, of course, firstly, you don't anyhow buy stocks based on people's hearsay, but like you probably do some research that you are more familiar with the company. You're probably already users of the product, right? Or secondly, maybe you can start with index fund and like S&P 500 that you don't need to put in $100,000 upfront, right? Because that could be very scary. But can you commit $100 per month?
Yep.
That's very doable, right? Because when you see the $100 per month start to give you compounding effect, you will get more confident as when you will feel like, oh, maybe I'm ready to put in $300 per month, $500 per month. That's how you become better and better at managing your money as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as like physical fitness as well. Like you're not going to be able to run like 20 kilometers day one. That's not going to be very fun. You start 1 kilometer, then 2 kilometers, and then you like build that up over time. It's the same thing absolutely with money. And the other thing I was going to add is on the first point around like support, like ladies, like I know it might sound like cringe, but like think about who in your life, which people in your life you look up to in this area and just like talk to them, right? There's nothing embarrassing about, hey, I want to get better at this. And I think that you've had some really interesting thoughts you shared, right? Can you tell me more? Or like create a group with some friends. Like you start to like just like A, get accountability, but also B, like you just start learning and feeling more like secure in your understanding of a space that is new to you when you have other people.
I absolutely agree. Like environment, community is very important. I think a lot of times ladies are scared of investing because they think, oh, I need to be very good at finance. I need to be good at accounting, mathematics. But at the end of the day, it's actually your temperament that will make you a better investor, not about like, wow, it must be like very sharp in numbers and all this. Because if you just buy the index, for example, it's in the long run, you don't look at it, you don't get scared because the market crashed. That's how you are still able to compound your wealth like about 10% per year for the last 50 years, right? And if you start with $10,000 and just every month like $500, you also like 30 years down the road, you're already like millionaires, right? It's just by simple things like that. And I mean, women generally, I think because we are more thoughtful and thinking about how to plan for future, how to be like, oh, want to make sure today, whatever the things what we do will not jeopardize the future. But I think this is actually a very good trait that makes you a better investor as compared to men who are probably slightly more aggressive. They just want to like hunt, right? Because it's like a hunter, right? So I just don't go for it, I hunt and I ignore all this, right? But women are like collecting the fruits and all this, plan, ration, everything. So actually this trait gives you a better advantage as an investor over time because we are more, I think, risk averse and more diversified and at the same time really thoughtful about planning of our money. So hopefully Sherry's experience also inspire you to start looking at money differently and have the courage to step into the world of money and start managing your money and eventually investing your money as well. Is any last advice that you want to give out to whoever who's watching this, and how can people follow more about you?
Yeah. So maybe last piece of advice is just think about one thing that you can do to improve whatever you want about managing money. Because I think the most important thing is just taking a step, right? And it doesn't have to be the biggest step. It just has to be a step, because once you feel the accomplishment of a step, then you're going to do 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Don't wait for like that perfect moment or doing anything big. It could just be like opening up a IBKR account, right? And putting like $100 into SPY, right? And that's, again, very tried and true strategy. If anyone wants to follow me, I have a few different places. If you are into LinkedIn,
She is very big on LinkedIn. Right? She got so many followers on LinkedIn, and she shared a lot of very insightful articles and her stock picks as well all over there.
Yeah, so LinkedIn's one. You can also follow me on Twitter, actually. I post a lot more about, I would say, founder journey, because there's a lot of like tech founders, builders on LinkedIn, on Twitter. So if that's something you're interested in, you're like, hey, in my path towards financial freedom, I want to build a company. I share a lot of like I call build in public thoughts. Just like, I'll be like, I tried this worked, this did not work, like just all out there. And then if you want to follow more of a video format, then you can follow me on TikTok. You can follow me also on YouTube and IG. I have all three. My podcasts are actually hosted on YouTube. So all like long, including ours that we did. Yeah, we did one. Check that out too.
I will put all the links in the description box below. Make sure to follow. Thank you so much once again, Sherry, for coming here, spending your precious afternoon together with us. And I personally really learned a lot. And I felt so much more empowered right now. Like I just felt like we share the both same vision of empowering more women to step out. And I think we are really a leader in this space. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And make sure to subscribe to my channel if you love deep dive interviews like this. And make sure to check out the next video over here where Sherry, she actually interviewed me on my personal investing journey as well. So you want to find out more, check out the video over here. And with that, I will see you in the next video. Arigato!
Okay, that is a really, I mean, it's good to check. I've had times where I've recorded, oh my God, an entire interview, and then it didn't upload properly. It was on Riverside, and then we just had to do it again. But it was fine. I was like, you know what, it's fine. It was a good conversation. I was like, I'm so sorry. We have to record it again.